Hi, welcome to the Women in Leadership Body, Mind, Soul, and Business podcast weekly reading. I'm Charlie. We are currently reading The Path of the Yoga Sutras by Nicolai Bachman. You can find all the information for this book and much more on our website. Go to www.womeninleadershipbsmb and then click Grow with Us. This week we are in chapter 29, Ahimsa, Nonviolence and Compassion. It is quite proper to resist and attack a system, but to resist and attack its author is tantamount to resisting and attacking oneself. To slight a single human being is to slight the divine powers within us, and thus harm not only that being, but with him the whole world. Gandhi. When we harm others, we harm ourselves, and vice versa. Ahimsa, which is the first of the 5 yamas, is the ethical practice of non-hurtfulness toward others and ourselves. It involves abstaining from intentionally inflicting pain or killing other creatures in thought, word, or deed. A non-judgmental and forgiving attitude is essential to practicing ahimsa, the first and most important social observance. Ahimsa also implies an attitude that strives to reduce harm. All other ethical observances are meant to be practiced alongside ahimsa. The second one, truthfulness, satya, is particularly powerful when observed with nonviolence, since clear and honest communication can prevent misunderstandings that may lead to anger or violence. Acting against one of the 5 ethical practices, like resorting to violence, results in endless suffering and ignorance, whether the person performed the action, caused it to happen, or consented to it. If we had our hand in any part of a violent event, then by the law of action-reaction, that energy will come back to us in some fashion. By the law of cause and effect, every action has a consequence. Greed, anger, and delusion cause us to act unethically. Many innocent people are harmed by someone who will do anything to acquire or maintain power. Sometimes the more money someone makes, the more money he desires, which leads to greediness and a false sense of importance. Then any threat to that person's fortune may cause him to fire someone who works for him or covertly secure the other's exit. Anger contributes directly to violence, such as when a person becomes angry after losing a tennis match and slams her racket on the court. Delusion can lead to violence as well. For example, when someone laughs while looking at you, you may think she is threatening or mocking you, and you may feel anger and violent thoughts in your heart-mind as a result. Harming others can occur through thoughts, words, or deeds, each of which we are responsible for. Our state of mind can affect others nearby, and vice versa. A quiet heart-mind calms, whereas an agitated one disrupts. Whenever we direct thoughts toward other people, they receive the energy of those thoughts. For example, looking at someone and thinking to ourselves, he is ugly, is like saying that thought out loud on a subtle level. Some men will look at a woman with lust in her eyes and minds, and in doing so, make her uncomfortable. On the other hand, thoughts of unconditional love and support will uplift another person. Being considerate by performing acts of kindness stimulates friendship and goodwill among people. Each person has the potential to be kind or be mean. Practicing the 8 limbs of yoga, especially the first limb of ethical behavior, can strengthen our kindness and weaken our meanness. If our kindness is strong enough, we can reduce any meanness we encounter simply by being kind toward it. If, on the other hand, our kindness is weaker in another's meanness, then we may become less kind because of the interaction. In that case, it is better to avoid meanness and be around more kindness in order to strengthen our own kindness. Otherwise, eventually, the meanness will overpower us and we will become meaner over time. Policemen are especially vulnerable to becoming mean, since they interact with violent people on a regular basis. All sensory information, especially sights and sounds, will influence our heart mind and create impressions in it. Every time we have an experience, we are colored by it. Therefore, if we want to cultivate nonviolence, we can consciously choose to reduce experiences that expose us to violence, including violent media, images, songs, and events, and replace them with positive input that has the character of kindness and compassion. What do we do if someone is calling us insulting names? Hurtful words have a way of inciting violence. We can let the words pass through us, understanding that the person saying them is unhappy and directing her frustration toward us. Letting the insults pass may be difficult because the ego may try to identify with and hold on to its interpretation of the words, throwing us into a cyclical whirlpool of negativity. Whatever we convey will eventually return to us. Reacting to negativity by returning the same will only add more harmful energy to the world. Who suffers when an act of violence takes place? Who benefits from an act of nonviolence? Both parties in both cases. For example, when a bully hits an innocent student, it might feel good to the bully on the outside and make him feel dominant and in control, but inside he may feel guilty for accosting someone who did nothing to deserve his wrath. Yet that same bully, encountering a person just injured from a car accident, might do what he can to save that person's life, and thus receive a large dose of inner joy in the process. One antidote to violence, according to Patanjali, is to understand the other side of the story, Pratipaska Bhavana, and consciously respond in a nonviolent way. If violence is directed toward us, we can use discrimination to determine our response. If we see a violent image or hear angry, hurtful words, we can try to remember the opposite. Loving kindness in order to mitigate the effects of the negative experience. Ahimsa can be applied toward ourselves as well. For example, if you do something wrong, do not beat yourself up about it or regret it for a long time. Be compassionate and kind to yourself and learn from the experience. Remember, how we treat ourselves will influence the treatment of others. The practice of nonviolence helps one to rise above the petty game of name-calling, and it can be cultivated in a more skillful way when the ego is under control of the inner mind, influenced by a pure inner light of awareness. Every time we think, say, or do something harmful to another sentient being, we feel the harm and intuitively know it's wrong. When we notice this behavior, we can apologize or take steps to reverse the negative consequences of this karma. Ahimsa is the key to inner and outer happiness and harmony. Thoughts. It requires more courage to be nonviolent than to condone or participate in violence. I alone am responsible for my thoughts, words, and actions. I will practice loving kindness and refrain from harming others. Exercises. Think of a person whom you often feel negative toward. Send him positive, uplifting thoughts. See if that changes the way you feel around that person. Have another person say something that normally causes you to react in a negative manner. Try and take a deep breath, then respond in a positive, constructive way. Think of ways you might be supporting or enabling violence. Whether those ways involve interacting with certain people, making particular purchases, or choosing violent types of entertainment. What could you do differently to support nonviolent activities instead? Thank you for joining us for this week's reading of The Path of the Yoga Sutras by Nicolai Bachman. And join us for the conversation. See all the details on the website. We'll see you next time. Namaste.